After the text scroll of questionable writing quality I talked about last time, we get a title sequence with a spaceship passing by Saturn. And some alien jump scares, in case you didn't realize what franchise this is in. The camera then crashes into the bridge as Strange Brew by Cream plays in the background. Apparently, it's performed by the showrunner, executive producer, writer himself. He thought this had deep thematic significance to the Alien franchise, and for the life of me I can't figure out what it is. Other than the fact that it has the words killing and inside of you, and the alien kills you by getting inside of you and subsequently bursting out of you. I suppose that should set your expectations for the level of writing we'll be dealing with. In this video I'm going to point out some flaws of Alien Earth in detail, and you, dear hypothetical viewer, might get the impression that I'm trying to convince you the show is bad because of those specific flaws. That is not the case. The truth is, I've heard from many strangers on the internet that it was really quite good, until it wasn't. The specific point varying widely from the finale to episode 2, so I was curious to see how good exactly the good part was. As a matter of fact, from the first minutes of the first episode it was both boring and painful, in a Chinese water torture kind of way. I could have just turned off my TV and never looked back, but I think it can be worthwhile to examine an experience like this and perhaps learn more about what separates good entertainment from bad. So, let's get on with it. This is the Maginot, an exploration vessel. You see, in 2055, Weyland-Yutani, a company that didn't exist yet at the time, already knew where to find a bunch of dangerous alien creatures, including but not limited to facehuggers. To gather them, they've sent an interstellar, fusion-powered, faster-than-light starship with a 65-year operational lifespan, with their cyborg agent on board, in 2055. 30 years from now, in real-world terms. 67 years before the events of the original film. Maybe they didn't know, and this exploration vessel simply found these life forms by exploring the galaxy. But then that would devalue the xenomorph. If you can just land on random planets and stumble upon an intelligent eyeball creature that crawls into your brain and uses your body like a puppet. The 65-year time frame might be intended to explain this, but for arguably mitigating that single issue, it's going to bring in a bunch of other, worse problems. I think specifying any explicit time frame for the mission was a mistake. It's unnecessary, the script does an absolutely horrific job of accounting for that little piece of information, and because of the whole retro-futuristic aspect of the setting, the closer you bring its history to the present day, the more awkward it gets. I'm saying the ship has some means of faster-than-light travel, not because it's ever mentioned in dialogue, but because it must. We are told its current distance to Earth and the estimated time of arrival. At its current speed, any interstellar journey would take over 20,000 years, measured from Earth. We get our first member berry here, unless you count those jump scares. In Alien we spend the first 5 minutes wandering the Nostromo. We see the vast slumbering machine waking up long before the people do. Because, as any pretentious film critic can tell you, the machine is the true villain in Alien, the literal machines directly and the corporate machine ultimately.
Unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
This sequence sets the mood, something the show couldn't possibly afford to spend entire minutes on, since this episode is only a bit over half the length of the entire movie. It also conveys the simple, direct information that there's no one awake on the Nostromo. By referencing it, Alien Earth establishes the same fact, which is not true. Approximately half of the Maginot's crew was awake to begin with. We are at 1 minute 30 and the show is already giving us incorrect information. If I thought they knew what they were doing, I'd call it lying. It would be better, in terms of establishing context, to show one of the crew members from the previous shift manually activating the defrosting process. Though in real time it seems like this scene depicts the computer waking the crew at the scheduled time, we can later reinterpret it as the Nostromo receiving the distress signal. And later still, a particular special order from the company. This has no relation to Alien Earth, as far as I can tell. Some critics have praised the show for replicating the look of Alien, comparing it to Alien Isolation. I can't really agree with that. Isolation uses existing design elements as basis and extrapolates from them, expanding the setting in a way that respects the original. Every computer and piece of machinery looks like it came from the set of an early 80s sci-fi movie, or office, or both. Earth copies original elements with high fidelity, but uses them in uninspired, exploitative ways. This ship was built 46 years before the Nostromo. Their interiors shouldn't look very similar, it's just a cheap, contrived attempt to evoke nostalgia. New designs, in turn, are quite bland and generic. It's almost as if there was some kind of miscommunication, and the set designers worked under the assumption that the story as a whole was a sequel to Alien, and the Maginot was a contemporary of the Nostromo. But as I was rambling about set design, the Maginot's computer had started waking the crew from cryosleep to deliver exposition. There's nothing inherently wrong with expository dialogue, but like any other writing device, it has limitations and side effects. For one, long expository scenes can hurt the pacing. The creators of the show mitigated this by inserting mild jump scares every minute or so.
That's God's Tang over there with his little beady eyes. Stares at you while you sleep.
What's with the racism? Why did they get a Korean actress to play the Japanese lady? Could they not tell the difference?
Well, fair enough. No, you're right. Of course it's not good. You have to...
Not to go full cinema sins on you, but did we really need the musical sting here to tell us that staring at people while they sleep is kind of weird and creepy? Or was it just to make people look up from their phones? So, there has been a few incidents of Chinese man jumpscare watching woman lady sleep. It's enough of a thing that someone, science lady, mentions he doesn't do that anymore. Why tell woman lady at this specific point in time? Not before, not at the end of the mission, but 4 months before the end? Is it to set up Chinese man jumpscare as a red herring for the audience? Woman lady has no comment on the fact that at least 4 people knew about this, but nobody did anything or even informed her until now. This kind of thing comes up a lot. It's called verisimilitude. You need to make it look like things have happened before the camera started rolling and are still happening when out of frame. You're inserting new events into history just when they become relevant, like playing D&D and coming up with a backstory for your character on the fly.
Mr. Tang won't be a problem. Unless he wants to work 65 years for no pay.
No, he's not going to work 65 years for no pay. He has already done the work. Forget it. One of the things the original Alien does really well is build suspense. It takes its time introducing the characters and creating tension. In fact, it takes 35 minutes before anything really disturbing happens. In Alien Earth we get a random cutaway facehugger 1 minute in, and they keep thrusting these fear flashes in your face, because your attention deficit idiot brain would forget this is supposed to be a horror show if they had characters interact for 5 minutes without any gore on screen. I mean, look at this. Is this an editing mistake? This isn't scary, it's nauseating. This lack of self-confidence is a very unattractive trait in a story. Of course, there are time-honored ways to prevent viewers from getting turned off by a slow start. An orthodox solution would be to open with Morrow hiding from the Xenomorph and the Maginot crashing down on Earth, then cut to 4 months prior. Not very original, but as the saying goes, most clichés are clichés because they work and don't induce seizures in the audience. Or you could just tell an engaging story. That used to work back in the day. I bet it would work again if you tried. A minor point here. In Alien, the dinner scene starts with the camera going around the table, stopping between Brett and Parker. We watch the rest of the scene from this position, almost as if the camera was a theoretical 8th member of the crew. Along with the lack of a specific point of view character for most of the movie, it helps reinforce the mindset of what would I do in this situation. In the show, we start next to Chekhov and then go around the table, and also look at various other angles. And there's a shot from Morrow's perspective. I mean, I'm not going to complain about breaking the 180 rule, but maybe it's a bit awkward when you force the actors to make eye contact with the camera. Another potential problem with exposition is that it needs to seem natural. That is, there has to be a diegetic reason for characters to communicate specific information to each other, and only by extension to the viewer.
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had.
If it's very obvious that people are telling each other things they all already know, for no reason other than that the audience needs to hear them to understand the story, that's going to ruin the immersion. To avoid that, a relatably ordinary, unremarkable person is often made a primary character in the story to serve as a sort of audience surrogate. We can identify with, and learn along with, someone in a position of justified ignorance. This is where I have to commend the writers of Alien Earth for inventing a new writing device. The Exposition moron, a character so stupid that everything has to be explained to him. A handful of corporations owns everything in the solar system, but this guy doesn't know who owns the moon. This would normally strain credulity. It's like if in our world, someone who doesn't know that China is a country got sent to be one of the only 3 people maintaining an offshore oil rig. Except China isn't visible in the night sky yet. Of course, that's assuming there had been no significant changes in the global politics of the solar system for the last 65 years, which is unlikely. It would make sense for the crew's common knowledge to be severely out of date, but that would apply to all of them, not just this one guy. I can see how this could make a bit of sense if he had grown up in a corporate city where the general population is kept borderline illiterate and ignorant. But even then, why would you hire a random unqualified peasant off the street to keep your ridiculously expensive state-of-the-art starship in working condition? Another viable explanation would be that he doesn't come from Earth. Maybe the Maginot made a stop at an off-world colony and picked up some replacement crew. As it happens, none of this is the case. We are told he didn't do his social studies, but that doesn't actually explain anything. These people must have been getting news from Earth, since everyone except Idiot Man knows about Prodigy, the new corporation founded just 10 years ago. At this point, doing your social studies would have no bearing on the situation. Is this just a polite way of calling him stupid? What are you trying to say about your target audience if your audience stand-in is a moron? Were you warning us, Jamie Brangus? You could have just said one of the characters wasn't keeping up with the news for whatever reason, and someone else is filling him in now. Or just have the people from Maintenance Shift A relay the news from Earth to the guys in Maintenance Shift B. Oh, and except for Morrow, the security officer, I'm not going to bother using these characters' actual names, since the show did not even afford 2 of them this basic level of dignity. They're just Maginot Crew number 1 and 2. And, spoilers, they are all going to be dead by the end of the first episode. So, you might ask, what is this shockingly blunt, as you already know, exposition scene in service of? What is so essential for us to know in order to understand the rest of the plot? Nothing. It's introducing factions and characters that could have very easily introduced themselves later. I could buy ersatz Elon Musk explaining his entire backstory to everyone who's willing to listen. I am starting to notice a weird trend in modern writing, where information that should have been conveyed between the lines is stated explicitly and repeatedly, but the basic facts that would make up the logical progression of the plot are never discussed, and probably don't exist even in the minds of the writers. This guy sitting next to Idiot is Joe Schmo. He's the engineer. Not the chief engineer, that would be this guy. Since the Maginot is burning too much fuel. Wait, you've noticed this problem now, when you're 4 months away from Earth? Have you been burning too much fuel for the last 65 years? If this is a recent problem, shouldn't you be looking at what's using more power than usual, and not what can be shut down? There could be a short. You could risk an electrical fire. That's very bad on a spaceship. Haven't you seen Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks and Kevin Bacon? The lack of fuel will be relevant to another stupid plot point in the future, but let's discuss that one another day, preferably never. So Joe Schmo suggests, or threatens, venting all of these specimens into space because a lot of good men died to get them. How many good men? What were their names?
And he was a good friend.
We can see 14 cryosleep pods. Why the non-specific a lot? Is it because the writer doesn't know? Anyway, isn't this kind of backwards? Shouldn't the dialogue go, we should eject the spooky alien critters into space? A lot of good men died to bring us these critters, I'm not getting rid of them. It's kind of like saying, many Buffans died to bring us this information, so let's set fire to the Death Star plans and forget about this. Joe Schmo is also a cyborg racist and believes the corporations are putting chemicals into the cereal to turn the friggin' space truckers gay. I'm surprised nobody mentions how he votes Space Republican. So, he's upset that many of his unnamed comrades died, so he's going to make their deaths pointless and probably void their contracts, making the entire trip a waste, because he's angry at the company for putting them in danger on this dangerous mission they've signed up for. Parker wasn't just an asshole, he was an underpaid blue-collar worker, frustrated that the company doesn't value him as much as the officers. All he wants is equal pay, but the rest of the crew isn't very sympathetic to his situation. This is all set up and, in fact, is the main focus of the initial dinner scene in Alien. It later turns out that, in a sense, the company respects the entire crew equally. Not at all.
There is an explanation for this, you know.
That is the shocking reveal of Crew Expendable. The crew signed up to transport a bunch of rocks from point A to point B, but Ash, and by extension the company, are feeding them one by one to the xenomorph.
What about our lives, you son of a bitch?
You can't have the same conflict if the crew is getting killed by accident while performing a very dangerous task that they signed up for and had exactly as much information about as their employer since day one. The ship's comms are broken and the log files appear to have been deleted, so Morrow tells his subordinates to look into it and goes in the freezer. What? The damage is suspicious enough that you won't leave repairs to the people normally responsible for these systems, sending your own people to check on them instead, but you won't stay awake yourself to make sure everything is fine? Okay, I hope nothing bad happens in the meantime. Now, there's a neat little detail in this scene that you might not have noticed, but is critically important.
It's the smell.
Some of the crew members are in uniform, while others are wearing bathrobes. These are clues that are supposed to help you understand who just woke up and which crew members are at the end of their shift and are going into hypersleep. Of course, there are also conflicting context clues, like the captain drinking coffee, but that actually makes sense, because the captain never sleeps. He was the youngest when they launched, and now look at him. Joe Schmo and Idiot Man aren't going to sleep either. Did they just wake up and put on filthy, grease-stained uniforms? Is this guy over 50 years old? Does the cat go into hypersleep? Is it over 30 years old? How long have the facehuggers been hanging out in their tubes? Does the writer know? Why is the security chief by design unavailable while Science Lady is awake and poking the deadly space bugs? Why would they arrange the shift schedule this way? Is Morrow asleep just so he won't get in the way of Science Lady, behaving like she's competing with Schmo's apprentice for the position of the dumbest moron on this ship? Is the captain only awake so he can get got by the space bug? Okay, I think I've already spent too much time complaining about the slop TV show everyone stopped caring about weeks ago. If you haven't seen Alien Earth, please don't waste your time. Just watch the two Alien movies instead.